What's going on, everybody? Jackson Mears here with Poly Sleepers, here to talk to you about Week 16, the early slate Monday through Saturday. Kind of going to review real quick about Week 15, the optimal cash game lineup for FanDuel that I gave out. Had its highs and lows, definitely some peaks and valleys. Some of the good plays were Le'Veon Bell, Marquise Goodwin, Kenyon Drake, and the kicker, Robbie Gould, with 24 points. Some lows, definitely some Russell Wilson and Jimmy Graham, and some D.D. Westbrook. Sometimes it's going to happen. If you would have told me that the Rams were going to blow out the Seahawks in Seattle 42-7, I would have highly bet on that, that it was not going to happen. But it did, and you move on another week. Hope you guys still have enough, have some money in your accounts. Pivoted off some of the lineups that myself and Paul gave out for FanDuel and DraftKings this week. So let's get started. We have 3 games this week on the early slate: Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Baltimore, and Indy, and then to finish it out, Minnesota versus Green Bay. So let's go at it. Quarterback on FanDuel, looking at, this is cash, just a reminder, this is cash game lineups, so 50-50 multipliers, some leagues, just simple stuff you can feel comfortable in. You just put these lineups in and hope and beat half the field. That's what you're going for. Our quarterback is Joe Flacco at 6,700. In the past 3 games, he has 6 touchdowns and 826 yards, while averaging 37.66 attempts. I know sometimes when you think about the Baltimore offense, you don't think about Flacco throwing it that much. Since they've made some changes to the offensive coordinator side of the ball, as well as some of the coaches, that offense has kind of come alive. And if they're going to make any way in this AFC playoff picture, they're going to need to throw the ball. Over his past 3 games, Flacco is averaging 19.41 FanDuel fantasy points, which is top tier, top 12. That's something what you need every week. Since the Colts have cut Vontae Davis, they've allowed 9 passing touchdowns to receivers, but the yard totals isn't really that bad. But they've also faced teams with limited talent on the outside, including Houston, Tennessee. I completely cross off the Buffalo game. There was a total, I think, in that total of that game between Buffalo and Indy, less than 110 passing yards. So that game's completely crossed off the list. But I mean, the highest yard total they allowed in the past 7 games was Jacksonville at 309 with Leonard Fournette. So I mean, I think Flacco is a heck of a cheap play. For 6,700, it allows you to stack some high-end wide receivers and running backs. That's what we're going to go to next. We'll go talk about running back. Our first position for running back is going to be Devontae Freeman at 7,600. Since returning from the concussion injury 2 weeks ago, he is averaging 4.58 yards per carry. He was also out touching Tevin Coleman 37 to 20 over the past 2 weeks as well. Tevin Coleman has been ruled out this week, so no worries on that end. As well as Tampa Bay is not going to have 2 of their best defensive players in Gerald McCoy, who is the 6th ranked defensive tackle on Pro Football Focus out of 121 graded participants. And then they're going to be missing Levante David, who is their key cog in the middle of their linebacking core. He ranks 3rd out of 104 graded linebackers. So 2 top 10 players on the defensive side of the ball that will not be playing in this game. I think it's a potential blow up spot for Freeman. When these 2 teams played in Week 12, Tevin Coleman ran for 19, had 19 carries for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tampa Bay has also given up 6 touchdowns on the ground in the past 3 weeks. This is a hell of a play. I think this week you're going to want to pay up for a running back on this small slate, just to get that exposure because you need touchdowns, and I think you're going to be able to get them with Freeman. And our next guy is Alex Collins of the Baltimore Ravens. He is priced at $7,000. Touched the ball only 17 times. We're recording right now, Sunday night. We just finished watching the Dallas and Oakland game. What a hell of a way to lose the ball for Oakland. No pun intended. Alex Collins only touched the ball 17 times versus Cleveland, but he was effective. He did get 7.7 FanDuel points, which isn't really that great, but it really won't kill you if your lineup's balanced enough. But that was the first time in 4 weeks that Collins hadn't scored a touchdown as well. Over the past 5 weeks, on total, he is averaging 88.8 yards per game. That is combined on the ground as well as through the air. Over the last 4 weeks, the Colts have allowed 628 rushing yards as well as 4 touchdowns, which breaks down to 157 yards per game. Past 2 weeks, they have got completely torched by Denver as well as Buffalo, both 220 yards or more in each game. I think that stacking Flacco and Collins together is smart, just in the aspect he will get some receiving yards and some receptions, but you're looking for a bulk of the running game, and Collins is going to bring that for you. So let's go ahead and go now to wide receiver, and the first wide receiver we're looking at is Julio Jones. He's priced at $8,600, and I just want to mention the stat line which he had in Week 12. 12 receptions, 253 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's a hell of a play. I really don't need to sell anybody on that. Why you don't need to play this guy? I think he should be in everyone's lineup. He will be in every one of mine. In 5 career games in Tampa, when you look at the results of Atlanta on the road, they're not as great as they are when they're playing indoors at Atlanta. But I looked at 5 career games that Julio's played in Tampa Bay, and he has gone for 36 receptions for 585 yards and 2 touchdowns. The receptions and yards are there. Touchdowns are not, but I think positive touchdown regression on that side of the ball on the road is coming. Tampa Bay also leads the league in wide receiver catches and yards. They've allowed 190 catches this season to the wide receiver position, as well as 2,400 receiving yards to that position. And what is the highest total game on the board for this 3-game slate? I think it is smart that you attack the Atlanta receiving corps as much as you can, and Julio is a great way to do it. Next receiver we're going to talk about is Adam Thielen at $8,000. In his past two games against Green Bay, he has gone 9 for 96 with no score, as well as 12 for 202 and 2 touchdowns in Green Bay last year. In 2 of his last 3 games, he does have duds, which is kind of concerning, which I do think will lower the ownership, which is good. But with Aaron Rodgers being back, this game will be higher scoring than what it could have been, what it should have been, had Brett Hundley started. But I did do some research on Pro Football Focus, which is one of the websites that I do use, and Green Bay has the 69th, 88th, 94th, and 112th ranked corners out of 119 graded participants. I did actually go ahead and look at the tape on my Yahoo account today of the Carolina-Green Bay game. And Josh Hawkins is one of the corners for Green Bay who will actually be seeing quite a bit of Mr. Thielen. And Mr. Hawkins today got torched by a gentleman named Damari Bird. 3 receptions, but 2 of those were touchdowns. So that is kind of a key note to take at hand. As well, I watched the game film of Thielen versus the Packers in Week 7 this past year, and Thielen was, on the short highlights that I found, Thielen was covered by Hawkins on 3 of those routes. And Thielen completely torched him each and every time. So no more need to sell on that. He's a hell of a play, in my opinion. Also coming off those duds, he'll be lower the ownership. Let's go ahead and go to our next receiver. Next receiver is going to be Mike Evans. Mike Evans is ranked. He's priced at $7,200. In Week 12, he was on the receiving end of 6 receptions for 78 yards and no touchdowns, unfortunately. In 7 career games versus Atlanta, Evans has 41 receptions for 613 yards and 5 scores on 68 targets. Evans hasn't scored in 6 weeks, which is kind of concerning, making him a boom or bust play. But what tends to be a high-scoring game, which looks like it's going to be high-scoring, I think Evans is a crucial part in what will keep Tampa Bay close in this game. Similar to Mike Evans is Michael Thomas, both big bodies, both taller statures. Mike Thomas last week against the Falcons went 10 for 117 and 1 score versus Atlanta. Also did some research on Pro Football Focus, kind of looking at advance. Mike Evans will be seeing a lot more of Robert Alford this week. Alford is 7 inches shorter than Mr. Evans. Again, this game is at home for Mike. He has a quarterback in Winston back. Hopefully Winston is feeling good. He looked good last week, so let's play Mr. Evans this week and let's win some money. Now, let's get to the crapshoot position of the week, in my opinion. That's tight end. Tight end I'm going with is Ben Watson at $4,900. One of the key injuries of this week was Jerry Maclin left the game versus Cleveland, and that opened up targets for Mr. Watson versus Cleveland, but every tight end versus Cleveland destroys and dominates. So he looked pretty good today. In the past couple weeks, the Colts have allowed lines of this to the tight end position: 1 for 54 and 1 score, 5 for 75 and 0, 4 for 63 and 1 score, 2 for 16 and 1 score, and 4 for 44 and no score. The Colts are 17th in DVOA against the tight end position. So kind of some notes on Watson. He has 10 targets the past 3 weeks. That's limited. But on these smaller slates, you're going for a value. And this is what we've came to find out. Over on the season, he has over 7.6 FanDuel points in 6 out of the 14 games. So the chances of him hitting that and bringing you value in return are likely. I think he makes a crucial play, pairing him up with Flacco and hoping they get deep into the red zone and maybe a touchdown comes about. So now we're going to pivot to the kicker position. The kicker I'm looking at is Matt Bryant at $4,900. Over his past 5 games, he has 10, 10, 11, 11, and 11. That is consistency, if you say no more. No other concerns this week in Tampa Bay, which is good. The game has a 49-point line total. In his past 3 games at Tampa, he has gone 10 for 10 on field goals, as well as 6 for 6 on extra points. That is a model that I hope continues to trend in that direction, and hopefully Bryant gets another 10 points this week. The next thing, and the last thing we're going to talk about is defense. The defense I am targeting in this lineup is the Baltimore Ravens against the Colts. Colts have now allowed 49 sacks to Jacoby Brissett since the start of the season. In their past 5 games, this is the totals for the Ravens D: 16 sacks, 9 interceptions, 6 fumble recoveries, and 2 touchdowns. In their past 4 home games, which that stretched out to, I had to go back and research. That was in their past 4 home games, they've had 12 sacks, 6 interceptions, 4 fumble recoveries, and 5 touchdowns. They also have 5 16-plus FanDuel points, so 16 or more points, in 5 of their last 9 games. when you're looking for a defense that has potential, looking for a defense that is going to get sacks and fumble recoveries and interceptions and possibly touchdowns, this team crosses every box on our list, and that is why they will be key in our cash game build. So last week when I gave out my optimal build, I only just gave one lineup with no pivots. I want to give you guys some pivots just so some things you could do. One thing you could do is go from, in one lineup, go from Joe Flacco up to Aaron Rodgers, and then which then would bring you down, would make you go down from Thielen to Sanu. Both of those, I think, both of those adjustments benefit this lineup tremendously, as well as almost, I think, in a way, almost maximize, if not contain potential. Or the next thing you could do is you keep Flacco and Thielen in, and you just pivot off of Baltimore in a high-scoring game to Atlanta. What you're doing with Atlanta's D is you're hoping that Winston's throwing the ball a lot, that Tampa Bay goes behind in the game, which then you're looking at sacks and possibly interceptions for the Atlanta secondary and defensive side of the ball. As well as coming off Atlanta, or coming off Baltimore's D to Atlanta, you're looking at going up from Watson to O.J. Howard at tight end. O.J. Howard has taken over the tight end role from Cameron Brate, unfortunately. But in this past couple weeks, O.J. Howard is getting 6, 8, 9, 11 FanDuel points, and that's what you want. For $500 more, I will take it. Also, what I do have, I'm going to close this video out here in a minute, showing everyone our lineups, both mine and Paul's. Mine is for FanDuel. Paul's is for DraftKings.